Hello, everybody. I hope I am audible to everybody. If I am, then can you please put so on the comment box? Okay, thank you. I am Ruchi Latkar, and I am going to be hosting this session. So before we start, I have a couple of announcements to make, given that there were a lot of confusions in the previous session. First of all, thank you for joining, and I hope everybody will cooperate with us by keeping their videos and audios off at all times. If there's any doubt, then please put it in the question box, the chat box, and we will address every doubt possible. Now, about the certificates, there will be a code given during each lecture. All of you have to save this code, keep it safe somewhere. Over the next 4 days, participants will get email with the links to the Google Forms. You have to open that PDF and you have to fill in the forms. And if you have the correct link, you will get a certificate for the respective lecture. And if you don't, then you will not. So I think that makes it clear. The code will be given during the lecture and it will also be put up on our YouTube channel and also in the chat box. So don't worry about that. And yeah, so please maintain your decorum. And I would like to request our moderator for today to take it from here.
Ruchi?
Yes, Arya, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Online Asian Symposium. I'm Arya, the Vice President of IVSA China, and very glad to be here to introduce the next lecture for you guys. Before the introduction, I want to thank all IVSA MOs of Asia region for working together and giving us this opportunity, especially IVSA Nepal for organizing this symposium. For the viewer joining us for the first time, I want to share some information with you. This online symposium is organized by IVSA members that stands for International Veterinary Students Association from all over Asia, which consists of 16 lectures on various aspects of public health and zoonosis by renowned speakers from different parts of Asia, which will be held over a duration of 4 days. We are heading towards the third presentation, tuberculosis, old disease, and new threat. To ensure the lecture proceeds smoothly, I'd like to put forth a few instructions. First, you can ask your doubts and questions in the chat box, which will be received and answered by the speaker at the end of the presentation. And second, you will receive a lecture code after the presentation, which is important to note down for getting the certificate for this particular lecture. And lastly, please keep your microphones and video cameras turned off and maintain decorum throughout the session. And now let me introduce the coming speaker, Dr. Hao Li. Dr. Li finished his PhD and postdoctoral study in Tsinghua University, and then he came to China Agricultural University as a faculty member in College of Veterinary Medicine. He and his group's research is mainly on the protective immunity against tuberculosis and the relevant pathogens antibiotics resistance. Tuberculosis is an ancient zoonosis and has killed more than any other infectious disease in history. In this lecture, Dr. Li will mainly talk about the history and the new threat of tuberculosis, share his research progress and perspectives on how to prevent and control of this bacterial zoonosis. I hope you guys have been ready for this lecture, and let's welcome Dr. Li.
Good afternoon, everyone here. It's my honor to be here to have a presentation about tuberculosis old disease new threat. And it's my honor to have invitation from IVSA, it's a student association. And at this moment about the world COVID-19 epidemic, and it's a very good chance to have the Zoonosis webinar from all over the world, and we can be together to learn more about zoonosis. I have been studying tuberculosis since 2018. And in this webinar, I will mainly talk about tuberculosis, old disease, and new threat. Okay, let's begin our webinar. Tuberculosis is a infectious disease that caused by the mycobacterial tuberculosis complex. There are several mycotuberculosis complexes. The first one is mycobacterial tuberculosis. The primary host is the humans, and it is around the worldwide. And also in the animals, like the wildlife animals, the elephant, and also the animals in the zoos, like monkeys and elephants, can be infected by MTB. We call it mycobacterial tuberculosis. And another mycobacterial tuberculosis complex called species called Mycobacterium bovis. The primary reservoir host is cattle, deer, bison, and badger. And it is also around the worldwide. Now the other species like bovis BCG is a kind of vaccine, and like the Capri africanum, Mycotid, Penidi, and Canity, they have different reservoir hosts and around the worldwide. So about humans like MTB, microbial tuberculosis, it can transmission from one person to another person. Like bovis, a very important zoonosis, it is can transmission from the wildlife animals like red bull and badger, and then to the humans. In this webinar, we will mainly talk about microbial tuberculosis and Mycobacterium bovis, these two species. This is a Mycobacterium under the gyne microscope. According to the figure, we can find that the Mycobacterium is around 1 microliter to 3 microliters in length. And this is a MTB under the transmission electron microscopy. And we can see the lipid included in MTB. And also, this is a bacteria cultured on the place. It is yellow, rough, and it needs a special culture place. And this is the spectrum sample that from the active patients. We can find that if the patients are active tuberculosis, the bacterium can be stained as red by acid-fast staining. This is the transmission cycle of the zoonotic bovis tuberculosis. And about the Mycobacterium bovis, if it infects the cattle and the cattle become active, the human drink the milk from the cattle or eat the meat, and then the human can be infected by Mycobacterium bovis. And also, like the live deer, for example, the deer or the red bull or the badger, if they eat the contaminated grass from the cattle, and then the wildlife can be infected. And this also have a chance to infect human. And the human also have a chance to infect another human. So this is the transmission cycle of the tuberculosis. About the pathogenesis of immunobiology of tuberculosis, if a bacteria enter one person, like this bacteria can enter the body of this person, and then the bacteria first injected by the macrophage. This is the macrophage, and then the macrophage can be together, and then the lymphocytes. The outer layer is the lymphocytes, including B cells and T cells. Then they can be outer layer of the macrophage, and they can be the granulomas. And if the human immune response can't be controlled the bacteria, then the bacteria can be outside the macrophage, and then this human can transmitting of MTB to the other person. And according to this figure, we can see that the macrophage can be around the infected macrophage and also the bacteria, and the lymphocytes are outside the macrophage. So this is normal, also called horn complex in the lung. And this is a figure. We can see that it's granulomas in one patient lung. When the MTB enter the body, the macrophage can phagocyte MTB. Some people, because they have very strong immune response, they can inhibit the MTB infection, and then the bacteria are killed. So these people do not be infected. And if the MTB infect one person, and then the person's adaptive immune response can be happen. For now, the first day MTB enter the macrophage, then the macrophage got antigen presentation to the T cells. The T cell then activate for CD4 or CD8, and also the T cells can be helped by B cells. B cells can secrete the antibody for MTB. And also human can form zoonosis like we talked before. This is the infected macrophage, and this is the jet form cells. This is B cell, T cell in the outer layer of the granulomas. If the people's immune response can't be enough to protect the people from infection, maybe the bacteria can be outside the macrophage, and then the bacteria go outside the granulomas and spread in the lung or even in the human body. And in all this process, the different immune cells like B cells, T cell, macrophage, NK cells have different roles in controlling MTB infection. So after talking about the bacteria and its pathogenesis, we may have three or two ways to illustrate of this disease. This is a nature case in the United States. It's a nature case. The workers on the bottom of the camp, they can isolate the bone and the fossil of the one bison. The researchers then isolate the MTB complex in the fossil and in the fossil of this bison, and they identify that this DNA are from the bacterial tuberculosis complex. And the evidence showed that the bovids, like the bison, were the vectors that transport the organism that are called bacterial tuberculosis, and which cause the disease called tuberculosis today. This bison was estimated to 17,000 years ago, and this is a very ancient sample to identify the MTB samples. The first evidence that the MTB can infect humans are from the adult young Isidro. And this is a prehistoric site for human being living. It's in this area, and now this area is under the water of the sea. It's about 10 meters below the surface of the water in the Pale Atlantic, and the humans, a woman and a child were found. The year are estimated to 7,000 years ago. And the scientists found that on the bone of the child, and they can find some bacterial tuberculosis infection signs. And also they do the DNA extraction and use the molecular methods. They found the mycobacterial tuberculosis complex, and also they use HPLC and found the woman, the representative, and the infant samples all have the mycobacterial tuberculosis DNA. This gives us a suggestion that about 9,000 years ago, MTB infected the human evidences.
Hello.
And the scientists also found that the mummies also have the tuberculosis infection evidence about 600 BC. And they can find that they use the PCR, they can have the evidence that they can amplify the DNA from MTB. And they also use HPLC methods. They can find that the samples from the mummy, like the lung samples and femur samples, and also they can find the maculates or MTB by HPLC. This gives the strong evidence that the mummy are infected by MTB before. This evidence gives us very strong evidence that the MTB has a very long history, not only in the animals, but also in humans. But at the moment, we still don't know MTB transform the animals to the human or the human to the animals. At the moment, we still don't know. We still need to have more research about this. And then in 19th and 10th century, the person that we need to know the Robert Koch, and he found the new technology microscopy to find the bacteria. And he also invented a method to probe cause called Koch postulates. This Koch postulates is very important for the infectious disease. The four postulates is that the germ, the disease must be caused by a germ, and the germ can be isolated. The third one is the germ can be infected the laboratory animals. And the fourth is that the germ isolated from the laboratory animals can be infected and the same as the previous isolated. And Robert Koch also found the bacillary anthrax, which is the cause of anthrax. He also found that the tuberculosis are caused by mycobacterial tuberculosis. And because of this groundbreaking research, he won the Nobel Prize in 1905. 19th century, TB, tuberculosis, still at the top of the mortality tables. At the beginning of 20th, Albert Camus and his colleague Camille Guerin, they discovered the BCG. BCG is from the cattle, and it is from about 239 passages from mycobacterial bovis. So it is a tiny neat bacteria, and it first tests on cows and then children. And in China, we have a scientist called Wang Liang, and he went to learn from Ahmed and Guerin and come back in 1930s, and then they began to have the vaccination. In 20s, we also, because the shortage of treatment methods, Hermann Behemer invented the TB centurial. because he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and then found he was killed, and he thinks that the clean air and the good living condition can help the tuberculosis patients recover. So he built the first TB sanitary at Gamastov, and this is also very famous. And then that's a very important milestone that Selman Waxman and Albert Schatz, they found the streptomycin. This drug is the first drug for treating tuberculosis, and Waxman won the 1952 Nobel Prize. And Jürgen Lohmann, he is a physician, and he invented the second tuberculosis drug called PAS in 1940s. And the PAS in combination with streptomycin is the first tuberculosis regimen in that time. Another important tuberculosis drug called isoniazid. This drug is synthesized in 1912 by two students in their destination. But at first, this drug was not used for treating tuberculosis. And in 1951, 3 companies simulators discovered this drug isoniazid in tuberculosis treatment. And then this drug is used in treating tuberculosis. One person we need to know is that Gerhard Stomach is famous for sulfur drugs. He also have great contributed to INH development, and because of his antibiotic, especially sulfur drugs in treating bacterial infection, he won the 1939 Nobel Prize. And then the pyrazimide and Synbut and Zepipin, these drugs are found. And then these drugs are used in treating tuberculosis. Isoniazid and Zepipin could cure TB patients, but with addition of PZA, the treatment can be shortened from 9 to 6 months. And if you use the EMB, like Ansenbuto, and the bacterial buckets can reduce the chance to become drug resistant to zefepezin. The evaluation of tuberculosis therapy. In the timeline, we can see that the first drug, streptomycin, developed in 1943, and the second drug, PAS. Then the isoniazid pyrazimide, and then the other drugs. These drugs, different drugs, until the zefepezin, and these drugs change the differences to treat tuberculosis, especially the 4 drugs combination, like isoniazid, zefepezin, pyrazimide, and Synbuto, and these 4 drugs treatments in 6 months is famous around the world. Most drug-sensitive tuberculosis patients are being treated by this kind of combination. And also now in these years, we also have several potential drugs. Some are used in a clinic, and some are still under clinical trials. One policy called DOS, Derived Observed Treatment, that course is very important, and it is invented by Carlos Tablo, and it gave a lot of good things to treat tuberculosis around the world. not only in China, also of other world, that with this DOTS policy, we have very good chance to control the tuberculosis infection. Tuberculosis is still a global health problem and brings new threat. According to WHO Global Tuberculosis Report in 2019, tuberculosis is the world's most deadly infectious disease, and in 2018, there are about 1.5 million deaths around the world, and 10 million new active tuberculosis, and about 3.5% MDR TB, called multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis. And in China, every year we have about 0.9 million active cases and about 49,000 MDR TB. About 4 weeks infection. Around the world is about 143,000 people infected and about 20,300 deaths in 2018. This gives us that microbial infection is not only cause the human but also affect the world economic. The most important threat is the emerging drug-resistant tuberculosis, because we have known that they have invented a dozen of antibiotics, but the bacteria is very clever. This bacteria becomes resistant to this drug resistance, so we can't use the drugs to treat them. It can become drug resistant to any drug. If it is resistant to at least the first line drugs like rifampicin and isoniazid, we call it a multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And even some bacteria become XDR-TB and be resistant to the first line drugs, isoniazid and rifampicin, and also to some second line drugs like the fluoroquinolone and amikacin, kanamycin. And around the world, 1 in 3 people with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis were started on treatment, and about 56% and 39% of people treated for MDR-TB and XDR respectively, and only about 56% were successfully cured of MDR-TB, and only 39% of XDR-TB were successfully cured. And India, China, and Russia as 3 countries have the most prevalent MDR-TB. Now, in the world, we have the only vaccine is called BCG. BCG now is the only licensed TB vaccine against TB. However, it should have variable infection around the world. In different parts, in different places, it have different protective effects from 0 to 80%. This may be because of the environmental or the economic development and also the human's genetics. Another problem that the HIV infected children have an increased risk of disseminated BCG disease. So we need we're in a hurry to need a new vaccine to prevent tuberculosis. Now we have a dozen of vaccine candidates in the clinical trials. Around all of these vaccine candidates, I need to point out the S22S01E, and this have already finished the phase 2B study, and it has shown that it can have about 55% protection from the latent infection to active tuberculosis. So this is have very good potential vaccine candidates in the future. And in this part, I will talk about the anti-TB strategy from the World Health Organization, FAO, the UNI, and OIE. The first one is integrated patient-centered care and prevention. The early diagnosis is very important. And also treatment of all people with TB, including drug-resistant TB. And also need to preventive treatment of persons at high risk. And we also collaborate with some other infectious experts like HIV experts to reduce the HIV and TB co-infection. The second is the board policies and supportive system. The first one is the politic commitment with adequate resources for TB care and prevention. The second one is the engagement of community civil society organizations and all public and private care providers. The third one is the social protection, which needs the social activities and also the universal health coverage policy and regular frameworks for case notification, matter detectation, quality, and rational use of medicines and infection control. The third is intensified research and innovation. So the research is very important for finding new diagnosis and also new vaccine and new treatment. And also the hospital is also very important. We need to put the new innovations and new innovation to be applied in the hospital to treat their patients. For controlling tuberculosis, we also need to pay more attention about bovine tuberculosis because it is one health challenge. And if we want to eradicate the tuberculosis, we also need to eradicate the bovine tuberculosis. This is the global contribution of bovine tuberculosis. This is the, we can find that in China, bovine tuberculosis mainly present in domestic animals, but in other parts of the world, maybe it can be present in domestic and also wildlife. So if we want to eradicate the bovine tuberculosis, we need to protect the wild animals, and then we can reduce the chance to transmitting the tuberculosis from the animals to humans. According to the OIE, there are several priorities we need to address. The first one is collect and report more complex and accurate data from human and animal populations. The second one is we need to improve diagnosis in people and also in animals. We need to more sensitive, more specific diagnosis methods to reduce, to have a surveillance of animals, the domestic animals and also the wildlife animals. And also we need to address research gaps between different countries. We need to pay more attention about the diagnosis, the vaccine development, the drug development, and also the public health policies. We also need to ensure more safe food. We need to improve animal health. We need to reduce the risk to people. And also we need to increase awareness, engagement, and collaboration. Also need to develop policies and guidelines for tuberculosis control, and need to implement joint innovations, and also advocate for investment. The aim by 2025 is that firstly, the new rapid diagnostic tools available for diagnosing TB. The second one is appropriate drug regimen defined for effective treatment of zoonotic TB. The third one is anti-TB vaccine available for people and also the wild animals. So if we can prevent the body tuberculosis from the animals, and also the wildlife animals have no chance to infect the domestic animals, then the transmission can be inhibited, and then the humans cannot be infected by Mycobacterium bovis or other Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex. So we are in the same world. One health is very important, such as the COVID-19 problem. We need to be together to fight this emerging new infectious disease COVID-19, and also we need to fight together against the old disease called tuberculosis. So thanks for your attention.
Okay, thanks,
Any
Dr.
question?
Ji. Is there anyone having question? You can put it in the chat box. Before the Q&A section, I would like to remind you the attendance code is for this lecture is OI78ER. Dr. Lee, here comes a question. Can you throw light on the live animal markets in China and the zoonotic disease associated with them, and what is being done to ensure that outbreaks do not take place? You can also see it in the chat box.
Live animal. You mean that the throw light on the live animal markets in China? This is a very good question, and we know that about this about that now the zoonosis is very important. It's dangerous to human beings. So like the influenza, like the SARS, it at last we can identify the source of the pathogens. So this also give us suggestion that we need to pay more attention about the wildlife animals and also the domestic animals' health. So if we can prevent the disease from the beginning, and then the humans can't be infected, and the epidemic can't be outbreaked. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lee. Here comes another question. You ask, what is the local plan to be collected for TB vaccine in ruminant?
What is the local planet be collected? What do you mean by the local planet? Can you explain what is a local planet?
Sir, I believe the participant wants to ask what is the local plan for vaccinating ruminants against tuberculosis?
Oh, I know. What is the local plant? I can't understand you. What is the local plant?
Sir, I believe they want to say plan, PLAN, plan.
PLEN. Okay. The local plant be collected for TB vaccine in ruminant. The ruminant is a good. Is also suitable for some bacterial-based complex. So different policy should be adapted in different countries. Some countries maybe they have the ruminant as the tuberculosis, MTB, tuberculosis, zero, and then they have their own plan. Yeah.
Sir, we have a next question. What about our congested farming systems, especially for pigs and poultry farming? What is the impact of these, as well as what about antibiotic resistance, as antibiotics are extensively used in these two?
You mean that antibody resistance and antibody? Sorry, pardon. Can you say it again?
Sir, the participant is asking what threat we face because of the congestive farming system that we have for poultry and pigs. And in the same system, what effect does antibiotic resistance have because we use a lot of antibiotics indiscriminately in both the farming systems?
Oh, okay. I think in about at least about the food, this means that the food bacterial antibiotic resistance, and it's also a word problem because that we add the antibiotics into the food for the animals, and then the animals eat it, and the bacteria becomes resistant, and this is a source of bacterial resistance. And about in tuberculosis, the resistance usually happens in the inadequate drug use, the wrong drug use, or use have low dose of drug used. So this may cause the drug resistance in humans. Because about bacterial bovis infection, active cattle, we don't usually use the drugs to treat it. We usually directly the cattle usually be killed, and then we usually don't treat it with antibiotics.
Our next question is, how is the anti-tuberculosis vaccine that is planning to be rolled out by 2025 different from the existing vaccine, which is BCG?
That is the goal of 2025, that we hope that we can vaccine. Now we have talked about that we have a dozen of vaccine candidates in the pipeline, and hope that in 2025 we can have the vaccine. We can have the tuberculosis vaccine. Okay.
We will just take a couple of more questions. Our next question is there any homeopathic medicine for tuberculosis, and how long can it take to affect, as in show effect? Sir, was I audible?
Okay, so what's the question, pardon?
Sir, the question was that is there any homeopathic medicine for tuberculosis? And if there is, how long does it take to show effect?
At the moment, the mostly used drug antibiotics, and it is the most effective in treating drug tuberculosis. We don't usually use other drugs. Usually, we use some drugs to reduce the antibiotics side effects, because the antibiotics usually have the side effects on the liver, on the kidney. So we need to use some drugs to reduce the chance to affect these organs.
Thank you, sir. We have another question. What about tuberculosis in aquarium fish? Should veterinary be worried about it in the present day?
So sorry, pardon, can I say it again?
Sir, the participant is asking about the cases of tuberculosis in aquatic life, and should the veterinarians be worried about the situation of tuberculosis in aquatic life as of now, presently?
So sorry, pardon, can you say it again? Sorry, I can't understand it. Listen too clearly just now.
Yes, sir, sure. So there are cases of tuberculosis in aquatic life as well, right? So what is their situation right now, and how much of a threat do they possess?
But you mean that the tuberculosis in wildlife?
In fish, sir.
In fish, okay. In fish, it is not. It's very. This question is very interesting. Now we don't know that the fish can be have the mycobacteria, but we don't know whether it is active. The other species called the mycobacterium marinum. It can be found in fish, and if the people is voided by the fish, and then if the people is immune compromised patients, then it can become mycobacterium marinum infection. And this is called NTM. We call the non-mycobacterial tuberculosis infection. So usually we don't know that. Usually we don't say that the fish can be a tuberculosis fish. We usually don't say this, but the fish maybe have the mycobacterial species in his body.
Totally, here comes a question. Is that what strategies should be adopted by veterinarians to minimize the chances of contracting bovine tuberculosis while working with livestock?
Yes, this is a good question. And because the workers to feed the animals like the cattle every day, they have very high chance to be infected by Mycobacterium bovis. So at the moment, because we don't, all the people born in China, like in China, when they are born, they first injecting the BCG vaccination. So, but they still have the chance to be infected by Mycobacterial species like Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium bovis. So at the moment, if you deal with the cattle's body, and we don't know it is died from some disease, maybe Mycobacterium bovis or maybe Brucellosis. So when you deal with this kind of animals, the healthcare, the the livestock farmers, they need to have their protection equipment, like wear masks, their wear clothes, and wear and wash their hands, and also wear the experiment code and experiment show, and this is very important for their protection.
And there is another question. Someone asked, does human-to-human transmission has higher percentage of transmission of animal to human, and its frequent X-ray check is a normal procedure of detecting tuberculosis in animal too, or it is only in human? Maybe you can answer the first question. Does human-to-human transmission has higher percentage of human transmission of animal to human?
Yes, because now the tuberculosis is mainly caused by tuberculosis in the world, and we have around the world every year about 1,000 is 10 million active patients every year. So we have a lot of active patients around the world. So this gives us the higher chance from one active patient to another healthy people. And also the like the animals tuberculosis, because they have the chance to infect the humans, but still because they have very low because the humans don't usually contact with them, and this that they have a lower chance compared with the tuberculosis patients to be infected. But we still need to pay more attention to the tuberculosis animals. Yeah.
Okay, and the second question is that is frequent X-ray check is a normal procedure of detecting tuberculosis in animal too, or it is only in human?
No, we have different diagnosis methods in humans and in animals. In humans, we usually use the TST, we call it tuberculosis skin test, and also in bovine cattle, we also use TST, but we use different injection dose. I mean, that the animals are different from the humans, so we use a different inject sites and different dose. And in humans, we have also some very important diagnosis tests. Like we usually use the T-spot. It can help us to diagnose latent infection. Now around the world, is about 2 billion people infected with MTB, but they are latent. They don't have active tuberculosis. If we want to know one is infected or not infected, we can use the T-spot, an immunological test, to identify whether he is infected or not. And if you want to know that these patients are active or not, we may use the bacterial culture, we may need to do acid-fast staining, we may need to use the gene export, PCR, and also other some methods. So now in humans, we have lots of methods. But now we still need to have one method that can differentiate between the active and the latent. Now we still don't have this kind of method. But in animals now we usually use the TST, and also another method we use as a IVSA to identify whether the cattle is infected or not.
Totally, and because of the time limitation, and that's all about today's lecture. And thanks totally for giving us this lecture, and thank you guys for joining us today. I will repeat the attendance code for this lecture again. It's OI78ER. I hope you can learn something about tuberculosis from this lecture and enjoy the following lecture as well. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Ruchi, you can take over this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for this wonderful session. And thank you, Arya, for being such a great moderator for this session. We will have a session from IVSA Mumbai in 2 minutes. So please don't leave us. And yeah, we will start in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ruchi. We will begin our presentation exactly at 2:30. So please stay tuned. Okay, so I think we should begin. So namaste, hello, and welcome to all our viewers from all over the globe. Thank you for joining us today for this lecture. My name is Mahima Gulati, and I am the president of IVSA Mumbai for this current term. I would like to start by thanking all the IVSA member organizations for their efforts in organizing such a wonderful event, and especially IVSA Nepal for coordinating throughout the process and giving us this prestigious opportunity to take part. For the viewers who have joined us for the first time, and as well as for the existing viewers, I would like to brief you about the event. This online symposium has been organized by the member organizations of International Veterinary Students Association from Asia. This is a 4-day program comprising of 16 lectures on various aspects of public health and zoonosis presented by renowned speakers from all over Asia. We are now heading towards the 4th lecture of day 1, which is on parasitic zoonosis. Before introducing our speaker, I would like to put forth a few instructions. Participants can ask their queries in the chat box, which is on WebEx, as well as in the comment section on YouTube. Participants will receive a unique code at the end of the session, which is important to note down for getting the certificate for the particular lecture. I will dictate the code at the end of the session, as well as it will be present at the chat box. So you will have enough time to note it down. So don't worry. And of course, please keep your microphones and your video cameras turned off and maintain decorum throughout the session. I would now like to humbly introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Mukalesh Gatne, who will be presenting a lecture on public health significance of canine helminths. Dr. Gatne is a retired university head and professor of veterinary parasitology from Mumbai Veterinary College. He has completed his PhD in veterinary parasitology. He has published 65 articles in national and international journals. At present, Dr. Gatne is the Vice President of Indian Association for Advancement of Veterinary Parasitology. He is a founder, India representative of Tropical Council for Companion Animal Parasite. He has also worked as India representative on Asia Pacific chapter of Canine Vector-Borne Diseases for 5 years. And I must mention, he has received the Best Teacher Award at Mumbai Veterinary College for 3 consecutive years. Dr. Gatne is an avid lover of sports and has participated in various inter-college and inter-university cricket, football, and table tennis tournaments. He was the captain of Indian veterinary cricket team that participated in Veterinary Cricket World Cup, which was held at South Africa in 2003. I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. We are extremely honored and delighted to have such an experienced professor and an all-rounder with us here today. I'm sure this lecture will leave all of us with much better knowledge and understanding about the zoonotic aspect of canine helminths. Without further ado, I hand over to Dr. Gatne. So please proceed with the presentation.
We will start with the session in just a minute. We have a little small technical difficulty. Thank you for your patience, guys.
Sorry guys, the speaker is facing slight technical issues. We will be back in just a moment. Participants, we are very, very sorry for this technical glitch. Network issues are something which we cannot predict. We will be back shortly. Please continue with the patients.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. Sir is in process of joining. We're extremely sorry for this. Hello, sir.
Yes, I think our speaker has joined.
Sir, have you been able to connect to the audio?
Yes, I have through laptop connect. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you
Hello,
hear
sir.
me?
Yes, sir.
So I have connected. I can see you.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see you and we can hear you. Thank you,
Okay.
participants, for your patience. We may now begin with the presentation on zoonotic significance of canine helmets. Over to you, sir.
You need to share.
Sir, do we have a stable internet connection? Would you like to share the PPT or do you still want me to do it?
No, I will do it from my side. If there is any problem, then we can share.
Yes, sir. I have made you the presenter, sir. You will be able to share the PPT now.
Whether you see my screen.
Yes, sir. We can see the screen. It is very clear.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Ask whether she can see your screen.
Yeah, she can see. Okay, shall we start? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and those my friends who have joined from the East, good evening to them. At the outset, I would like to congratulate one and all for taking this initiative, and I am happy particularly because of two things. One is the theme what you have chosen, zoonosis, which is a very important topic, and in the current scenario it is very apt. Just a few days back, we have observed World Zoonosis Day. And the second reason is rather a personal reason. I have been retired for, say, 2.5 years. And the pain the professor goes through when he retires, that there are no listeners. Even in my home, there are no listeners. So thank you very much for providing me the dais and the audience. I can't see the audience, but at least I can assume that somebody is listening to me. Now, I have been asked to talk on the parasitic zoonosis, which is a very vast topic. There are more than 200 species of parasites which shuffle between the animals and human beings. So, I have chosen this particular topic, that is public health significance of canine helminths. There are two reasons why I have chosen this topic. One is that I am myself is a pet practitioner for last 25 to 30 years. And second reason is we have worked to some extent in our laboratory along with my postgraduate students on some of the canine helminths. But before I talk on my specific topic, I have been requested to talk on the general aspect of zoonosis. So, zoonosis, as you can see on the screen, that it is a branch of the biology which deals with infections and infestations which are naturally transmitted between the vertebrate species of animals and man. Actually, man is also vertebrate species of animal, but man considers himself very supreme and biased to himself and that is why he has singled him out from the other vertebrate species of animals. So infections which are transmitted from vertebrate species of animals to human beings are called as zoonosis. And so the organisms are called as zoonosis, and the branch is known as zoonosis. What is important here is that these infections are naturally transmitted. There are so many organisms which can be transmitted experimentally, but those organisms are not included in the list of zoonosis. Now, if you see the classification of zoonosis, it can be classified by various ways on the basis of etiology that you can see in the first column of the table. Then depending upon which is the predominant host or the principal host, whether it is primarily infection of animal and human beings are accidentally involved, or whether it is the infection of animals, infection of man and animals are involved. So depending on that, the different terms have been coined. First is anthropozoonosis. These are basically infections of animal and which cross over to human beings occasionally. I can quote the example here, that is toxoplasmosis. Zooanthroponosis is exactly the opposite situation, where human beings are the principal host and occasionally the infection is transmitted to animals. The classical example of this is amoebiasis, giardosis, or even leishmanosis, which is basically infection of human beings, though there are certain animals which act as reservoir, but it is basically disease of human beings and transmitted by certain species of flies. So when these flies carrying the organisms, they take blood meal from dogs, then the infection jumps onto dogs also. So that is zooanthroponosis. The third category is amphizoonosis. Now here, both the partners are equally vulnerable or equally susceptible to infection. I don't find, to the best of my knowledge, any example from parasitology, because the parasites, as you all know, they are host specific, and within the host range also, they have preferences. So I have quoted an example from bacteriology, that staphylococcus, which are the surface organisms, they are present on the body of human beings as well as different species of animals, and both are equally affected. The third way of classification is depending upon the mode of transmission. I have been asked to, or quoted leishmanosis, basically a disease of human beings, but the dogs can also be infected through the agency of sandflies or phlebotomous species of flies. So that kind of zoonosis is known as metazoonosis. Now, as I've said, that parasitic zoonosis is a very vast topic. So I have, summarized, different parasitic infections which are coming from different sources. So as you can see on the screen, that what are the different parasitic infections coming from different animal sources. You can see from sheep and goat, I have quoted the example toxoplasmosis. I have quoted few examples. Then from cattle, there is cryptosporidiosis and tiniosis. Tinea saginata infection is acquired by consuming measly beef. Dog, we are going to talk, so let us not waste time on this. Then from cats, visceral larva migrans, cutaneous larva migrans, toxoplasmosis, these are the infections. From pigs, we have seen one example of Tinea solium. In addition to that, there is also trichinosis and sarcocystosis. The same thing is summarized in a different way, that there are certain infections which are meat-borne infections, tiniosis, trichinosis, toxoplasmosis, sarcocystosis. There are certain infections which are coming from arthropods. The list is very long, as you can see on the screen. Some of these infections I have already mentioned, like leishmanosis. There is trypanosomosis, filariasis, then malaria. Then there are some infections which are coming from fish, like Diphyllobothrium, Opisthorchis, Clonorchis, Anisakiosis. And there are saprozoonotic infections. These are actually coming from, contaminated vegetables, contaminated water, green leafy vegetables which are grown on the contaminated soil, or, the vegetables like carrot, then radish. They are sometimes contaminated with the infective stages of parasites, and they acquire the infection by consuming, because these are consumed as a salad raw, and that is how the infection is acquired. Now, as you can see in the center, there is a man who is wearing dark glasses. So that is the representation of common man, who doesn't know what sort of infection he is acquiring through different foodstuffs. I don't want to say that he shouldn't eat those things, but he doesn't know what are the infections that are coming. So general awareness has to be created about all these zoonotic infections, and that is why I have congratulated you that this is a very, very important topic. I'm not able to shift the slide. Okay. So now coming to my main topic, that is public health significance of canine helminths. Now, these helminths can be categorized into different groups like nematodes, cystodes, and trematodes. So what I have done here, that I have listed out the nematodes, cystodes, and trematodes, which are widely prevalent in different parts of India or reported from different parts of India. And in the last column, you can see whether those parasites are having zoonotic significance or not. Then I have also used a color code here that ones which are printed in red are widely prevalent in India. They have a pathogenic effects in dogs and they pose a serious problem of zoonosis. Then there is Strongyloides stercoralis, Phylloides, Spirocerca lupi. The list is very long. Then there is one more, Dirophilia immitis, which is also considered as zoonotic, but at least I haven't come across a single case of human heartworm infection in India. Then the other species is Dirophilia repens, which is quite common in the subcutaneous tissues of dogs, and it is transmitted through mosquitoes. And we have, reports of the human Dirophilia repens infection in India. I have myself, confronted 2 to 3 cases in Mumbai, and if time permits, I would like to share my experiences in that also. Then in the cystodes group, Dipallidium caninum is the most common in India. Then you have Taenia hydatidina, which is of purely veterinary importance. Taenia multiceps, there are sporadic reports of Taenia multiceps, but the most important here is Echinococcus granulosus, which is present in the small intestine of dog, and it is responsible for causing hydatidosis in human beings. In addition to that, there is Diphyllobothrium latum, Spirometra, Mesocystitis. But I'll be talking, in detail on those parasites which are printed in red. So basically, Toxocara group, hookworms, and Echinococcus. Then as far as trematodes are concerned, again, there are quite a few. Opisthotris tenucollis is a zoonotic. Then there is Heterophyes, Metagonymous, Echinochasmus. Schistosoma species are also zoonotic because they cause cercarial dermatitis in human beings. Paragonimus westermani are also sporadically reported, but I haven't come across a human case of Paragonimus westermani in India. So I'll be concentrating more on those infections which are widely prevalent in dogs, which pose a serious zoonotic threat. So basically 3 different groups. Now coming to the first group, and that is the Ascarid infections in dogs. Now there are 2 types. One is Toxocara canis and the other is Toxoscaris leonini. Both reside in the small intestines of dog. Toxocara canis is 10 to 18 centimeters long, whitish in color, and Toxoscaris leonini is around 3 to 10 centimeters. Now what I am going to do, I am going to first talk about the transmission mode in dogs. That means dog to dog transmission, and then dog to human being. And then in the table below, you can see the harmful effects in dogs, and then I will talk in detail about the harmful effects in man. Now coming to the mode of transmission from dog to dog, the life cycle of Toxocara canis is very complex. Don't worry, I'm not going to bother you with the complex life cycle here, but the dogs which are infected with Toxocara canis, they deposit large number of eggs in the feces. And these eggs, over a period of 5 to 10 days, they develop depending upon the climatic conditions, and they become infective. So when the second stage larvae develop inside the eggs, the eggs become infective. And when the infective eggs are consumed by the dogs through contamination of feed and water, then they acquire the infection. In addition to that, there is also prenatal infection. That means the larvae migrate in bitches. The larvae migrate to the gravid uterus and they infect the developing pups inside. And in fact, the pups are born with the infection. Then in addition to that, after whelping, the larvae migrate to the mammary glands and appear in the milk of infected bitch and for first 20 days. And the suckling pups also acquire substantial infection via lactogenic route. That is not the end of story because rodents also play their part in the life cycle of Toxocara canis. The rodents, when they consume the infective stages egg-containing second stage larvae, then these larval stages remain in dormant situation in the rodents and for a few months. And when dogs, eat rodents, because dogs have a habit of, chasing rodents, killing them and eating them, particularly stray dogs. So when they consume these rodents, they acquire the infection and life cycle is completed. As far as Toxoscaris leonina is concerned, there is only oral infection either by consuming egg-containing second stage larvae or by consuming rodents. So rodents also play important role here. Now coming to the transmission from dog to human being. Human beings acquire infection basically through consumption of egg-containing second stage larvae. There is only one way, and that is by consuming egg-containing second stage larvae through contamination of food and water. Of course, during subsequent plates, we are going to see the transmission mode in more detail. Coming to harmful effects of Toxocara canis, as I've said, or I think I haven't said, that the infection is very common in pups or in young dogs because they acquire substantial infection via prenatal route and lactogenic route. So when they acquire the infection, the larval stages migrate through lungs, and as a result of which, there are certain pulmonary changes, and then the dogs show signs of intermittent coughing, sneezing. There may be discharge from the nostrils. Ultimately, they settle into the intestine where they cause enteritis. There is diarrhea, there is dehydration, and animals become progressively weak and emaciated. The young pups, they do not grow well. There is a stunted growth. And the total appearance is like a pot-bellied appearance. Their abdomen is bulged as compared to the rest of the body. The body coat also becomes very rough. In case of Toxoscaris leonina, there are only digestive disturbances. There is no migration through lungs. There is no prenatal infection. There is no, lactogenic infection. So the digestive disturbances or the digestive symptoms are associated with Toxoscaris leonina. Now, the harmful effects in human beings. In human beings, these parasites are responsible for causing a condition known as visceral larva migrans. When they migrate to eyes, the condition is known as ocular larva migrans. And sometimes, occasionally, they migrate to brain, and then it is known as neural larva migrans. So let us see this condition in detail. This chart or this cycle shows the etiology. In the literature, there are around 9 to 10 different species of helminths responsible for this visceral larva migrans. We are dealing with only the common ones, and that too in India. Toxocara canis, I have already mentioned, Toxoscaris leonina in dogs and cats. Then Toxocara cati is also a common entity in cats in India, and I'm pretty sure in other countries as well. Capillaria hepatica is from rodents, and then Lagocil ascaris from wild carnivores. So all the immature stages of all these parasites are responsible for causing visceral larva migrans. Now let us talk about the transmission dynamics, how human beings acquire infection. What I mean here, that I am going to tell you about the situations, circumstances, occasions, through which the human beings or the infection is facilitated because of these occasions. As I've said, that the adult worms are present in the intestine, and particularly in pups and in dogs below 1 year of age. Now, what point I would like to emphasize here, that generally in the life cycle, when they acquire a prenatal infection or lactogenic infection, the adult worms develop in the small intestine of the pups at the age of around 5 to 6 weeks or 4 to 5 weeks. And you will also realize or appreciate that generally the pups are adopted at the age of 6 weeks or up to the 8 weeks. So when the pups are adopted by the pet owners, they already have the adult roundworms, Toxocara canis, in the intestine. And thousands of eggs are, deposited by these worms, and these eggs appear in the feces of infected pups. You will also appreciate that the feces of pups is little pasty or a semi-solid, and the pups defecate around 4 to 5 times in a day. These eggs are also very sticky. So as a result of this, there is a contamination of the surfaces, premises, human houses. The dogs or the pups, also have a habit of rolling on the floor. So the body coat is also contaminated with the eggs of Toxocara canis. In addition to that, there is these pups also jump onto sofa. They also jump onto the beds. So the sofa covers, bed sheets are also contaminated. I have also seen, being a practitioner myself, I have also seen pups on the dining table, pups entering or the dogs entering into the kitchen. So the entire house is contaminated with the eggs of Toxocara canis. And these eggs being sticky in nature, they remain there for quite a few days or even for a few weeks. In addition to that, even the public places are also greatly contaminated with the eggs of Toxocara canis and Toxoscaris leonina. The gardens, playgrounds, footpaths, beaches, school grounds, bus depots, all are contaminated. Here, the stray dogs play a very important role because stray dogs, they deposit large number of eggs. They acquire infection through rodents, so they are having patent infection, and they deposit large number of eggs in the feces, and these are public places are contaminated. As you can see, these public places, these are visited by people almost every evening or weekends, and that is how they become vulnerable to these zoonotic conditions. Although general public are susceptible to this infection, the infection in human beings is commonly encountered in the age group of 4 to 7 years, because children have a habit of playing with the mud, playing in the sand, and that is how they readily become infected with the infection. Then in addition to that, there are occupational hazards with the gardeners, plumbers, the workers of the irrigation department. Even the pet practitioners are also exposed. As I've said, the eggs are present on the body coat. So when the case is presented in the dispensary or in the hospital, even the table is contaminated. If it is not clean, particularly during rush hours, it may happen. Then, even the pet practitioners are also vulnerable. Dog trainers, dog walkers, then the kennels, then dog parlors. So all these, places can be contaminated with the eggs of Toxocara canis and Toxoscaris, and that is how the human beings acquire the infection. Now coming to the pathology of this infection, what happens exactly in the body of infected person? As I've said, the infection is acquired by consuming egg-containing second-stage larvae. So in the intestine, these eggs hatch, and the second-stage larvae are released. And via blood circulation, they migrate to different visceral organs like liver, lungs, spleen, and other organs as well. And in these organs, the worms or the immature L2 stages, they start migrating in the substance. Occasionally, these larval stages also migrate to the eyes and then to brain also. And at all these locations, because of their migration, they are responsible for causing chronic eosinophilic granulomatous reaction. And as the persons are repeatedly exposed to the larval stages, or as the larval stages continue their migration, this granulomatous reaction becomes increasingly severe because the body also wants to restrict their migration. So these larval stages are trapped in the granulomatous reaction. I think I have few, pictures showing histopathology of visceral larva migrans. What are the symptoms that are associated? Now, generally, in India, VLM cases are reported as a case reports, and variety of symptoms have been shown to be associated with visceral larva migrans. But there are certain common symptoms which I have listed here. There is intermittent fever, there is intermittent coughing, there is hepatomegaly, enlargement of liver, particularly sometimes in children, the liver may be enlarged up to umbilicus. There is loss of appetite, loss of weight. Then when the larval stages migrate to the eyes, there is endophthalmy. That means the entire eyeball may be affected, uveitis, peripheral retinitis. There is a retinal granuloma. And these lesions sometimes appear like retinoblastoma. Now, wrong identification of ocular larva migrans as a retinoblastoma may lead to unnecessary enucleation of eyeball, which is a very, very serious error. Now, in addition to that, such persons, have a decreased visual acuity. There is leukocoria. Leukocoria means there is a white reflection of retina. So all these symptoms are associated with visceral larva migrans or ocular larva migrans. Then how to diagnose it? Nowadays, these cases are invariably detected during CT scan or MRI. But these techniques are not routinely done or not routinely available in smaller towns or villages. So certain hematobiochemical parameters can be studied or can be evaluated. Like, if you do the blood analysis, there is eosinophilic leukocytosis. The leukocytic count may go as high as 20,000, sometimes even 30-40,000. I have seen a reference where eosinophilic count was 30,000. So there is a eosinophilic leukocytosis. There is elevated level of IgG and IgM by 2 standard deviation, but that can happen with other infection also. Then anti-A isohemagglutinin titers go above 1:400. Anti-B isohemagglutinin titers go above 1:200. I don't say, you can just rely on one particular parameter. You will have to, see the entire scenario, the symptoms, then hematobiochemical parameters. And if, 3 or 4 parameters are answering positively, then, you can think of visceral larva migrans. Or the medicos, they can think of visceral larva migrans or ocular larva migrans. Now, these are some of the pictures you can see here. Sorry. Here, this is a liver where the larva is capsulated. In this case, this is the larva which is trapped in the granulomatous tissues with leukocytic infiltration. Mostly these are eosinophils. This is a lung where you can see the larva here. And this is a kidney where you can see the larva. All these pictures I have collected from Google. I would like to acknowledge that here. Then there is one more condition which is somewhat similar to visceral larva migrans, and that is known as tropical eosinophilia. And visceral larva migrans could be mistaken for tropical eosinophilia. So one should know the differentiating points between them. In case of visceral larva migrans, there is hepatomegaly, which is not there in tropical eosinophilia. Then eosinophilia in visceral larva migrans is very high, and it is persistent. While in case of tropical eosinophilia, the eosinophilia is not persistent. Then if you treat these cases with arsenic, then there is prompt relief in case of tropical eosinophilia, but there is no response from the cases of VLM. Similarly, if you look at the age, generally children are affected more commonly in VLM, while tropical eosinophilia is kind of allergic reaction where adults are affected more. The treatment regime contains like diethyl carbamazine, which is an old treatment. Nowadays, you have newer medicines like ivermectin, which can be used, or heavy doses of albendazole can be used. During this lockdown, I could not go to library to collect, to review the literature, but whatever I could access, I got one particular reference where these authors have summarized the cases of VLM in India. And I was really shocked that there are only 11 or 12 cases which have been reported till 2015 because these parasites are widely prevalent in dogs across the length and breadth of India, and the data, canine data, do not correspond with the data of VLM in India. One more surprising thing what I can see here is that look at the age group. Barring exception of this case, 11th case, and to some extent the number 8, all these are adults, which is rather surprising because generally VLM is a condition seen in children. The symptoms are more or less same what I have described, and these cases were detected by CT, MRI, and hematological or hematobiochemical parameters. So that was about Ascarid infection, that is Toxocara canis and Toxoscaris leonina. Then coming to the hookworms. Now, hookworms are also very common, and I can say that it is the most pathogenic group of worms in dogs. There are 3 species of hookworms occurring in India: Ankylostoma caninum, Ankylostoma brasiliense, and Ankylostoma selanicum. Let me tell you here that when the infections are identified or diagnosed on the basis of stool sample examination, generally it is recognized as hookworm infection. But in laboratory, when you do morphometric analysis or molecular analysis, then you are in a position to identify the species. So we have done it in our laboratory on a couple of occasions by getting the samples from different regions, and I can say that all these 3 species are prevalent in India. Now, Ankylostoma brasiliense and selanicum were earlier considered as synonyms, but now it has been established that these are 2 distinct species. There are differences, molecular differences, there are morphological differences, and the biology is also different. So now what we will do the same pattern. We will see, transmission from dog to dog, then to human being, then harmful effects in dogs and harmful effects in human beings. Now, the animals which are infected with hookworms, they deposit large number of eggs, as you can see here on the screen, and these eggs hatch within a day or 2 to release the L1 stages, that is the first stage larvae, which are then converted to L2 and then converted to L3. And L3 stages are the infective stages. It usually takes 5 to 7 days to develop infective larvae. And then these infective larvae enter into the body of dogs either by oral route through contamination of food and water or through skin penetration, particularly from the paws. The prenatal infection, which was reported with Ankylostoma caninum, but it has now almost established that prenatal infection doesn't occur in hookworms. There is a possibility of lactogenic infections, and rodents like Ascarid worms, in this case also, they play a very, very vital role in the transmission, particularly to the stray dogs and to some extent to the pet dogs also, because some of the pet dogs which are there in Bangalore, having a backyard or front garden, and when these dogs are let loose, they have a habit of chasing rodents. Now, coming to the mode of transmission in human beings, it is by skin penetration by the L3 stages. In case of Ankylostoma caninum and Ankylostoma selanicum, it is also by oral route. And as I've said, like in Toxocara canis and Toxoscaris, the premises are contaminated and the public places are also contaminated. The only difference is that longevity of the L3 stages is not much. In case of Toxocara canis and Toxoscaris, they can survive for a few weeks to even few months. But these third stage larvae, they cannot survive for a longer period. They can survive for a few weeks in suitable climatic conditions. Now, coming to the harmful effects in dogs, so basically 4 different systems are involved. One is a hemopietic system, respiratory system, digestive system, and cutaneous system. These worms are voracious bloodsuckers, And as a result of this blood-sucking activity or hematophagous activity, there is a great loss of blood and it leads to anemia. Particularly in young ones, the anemia develops rapidly. Then the larvae also migrate through lungs and they are responsible for causing pulmonary changes, and then the affected dogs show signs of intermittent coughing. Ultimately, the adult worms develop in the intestine and there they cause enteritis, which may vary from simple catarrhal type to hemorrhagic enteritis, where there is a diarrhea, dysentery, dehydration, so the animals become weak. Then there is also the skin, because the larval stages, they migrate or they enter through the skin, and the skin lesions vary from moist eczema to severe ulcerative patches. In human beings, the larvae enter through skin, occasionally through contamination of food and water, and Ankylostoma brasiliensis is mainly responsible for causing cutaneous larva migrans. This particular term was coined by Crocker in 1893. Ankylostoma caninum and Ankylostoma selanicum, they also cause a cutaneous larva migrant, but for a transient period, because eventually they continue their migration through lungs into the intestine. So let us see cutaneous larva migrans first, which has got different names in different regions and in different countries, like dermal larva migrans, creeping eruptions, ground itch, plumber's itch, and likewise there are more number of names in different countries. Let us talk about the sequence of events taking place in the body of infected human beings, particularly in the skin. Ankylostoma brasiliensis, they penetrate through skin, and generally the exposed portion of the body are affected most commonly, like feet, then arms, elbows. Then sometimes, you will also see the lesions on the face and buttocks, particularly when persons, they visit beaches. Then what happens in the skin? These larval stages, they migrate in between the layer of stratum germinatum and stratum corneum, and the rate of migration is around 2 to 3 centimeters per day, and that is how they continue their migration for a few days to few weeks. The severity of lesions depend upon the degree of exposure. And if you see the lesions, I think I've got some pictures in the subsequent plate. So the lesions, initial lesions comprise of vesicle and papules, and about 2 to 3 centimeters ahead, there is a erythematous patch. 1 to 2 centimeters ahead, there are larvae. And then these larvae migrate in a linear direction. So serpiginous tracts are created, erythematous tracts are created, patches are created. As a result of all these events taking place in the skin, there is in severe pruritus. So there is intense itching. The infected person go on, scratching the affected portion or rubbing the affected portion, and then there is a secondary bacterial invasion, and that leads to pyoderma. I forgot to mention here that apart from Ankylostoma brasiliensis or Ankylostoma species, there are other species of nematodes are also responsible for causing cutaneous larva migrans. Bunostomum, Gnathostoma, Strongyloides turcoralis. Strongyloides turcoralis is basically a parasite of human being, but it enters through skin, and some lesions, transient lesions, are formed by this parasite. So these are the pictures which again I have collected from Google search. This is, the initial lesions like vesicle and papules. Then you can see here, you can see here erythematous tracts. These are erythematous patches. You can see there is a secondary bacterial invasion and there is a pyoderma to some extent. These are the pictures from this particular article I have collected where the lesions are seen on the face and on the forehead. So such lesions are formed in cutaneous larva migrans. In the same article which I referred, I got this table also. So this is just a ready-made table I have picked up from that particular article. There are 12 cases. So in this case also, the data do not correspond. The prevalence in dogs is up to 60%, 70% in some region. But there are, very few cases of cutaneous larva migrans, and there is only one case of ocular larva migrans reported in India till 2015. I'm very sorry I could not search, literature further because of this lockdown and some limitations. In this case, you will see, the occupation of these persons who were affected with cutaneous larva migrans, basically from the agriculture community or, from the fishermen. So the lesions are on the face, on the legs, and on the palms. And the authors have also attempted to, pinpoint, the occasion from where the patients might have picked up the infection. So a very interesting findings here. Now, as I've said, Ankylostoma caninum and Ankylostoma selanicum, they migrate further. So when they enter either through oral route or through skin, obviously they also cause cutaneous larva migrans for a transient period. But then, they enter into the blood circulation and travel to the lungs. Then in the lungs, they break open the pulmonary capillaries to become free in the alveoli, so enter into the air passage, then they are cuffed up, and then from pharynx, they are swallowed down to intestine. In the intestine, only Ankylostoma selanicum, they develop to adult worms, and they produce eggs, and these eggs are voided in the feces of infected persons. But Ankylostoma caninum, they develop only up to immature adults, that is L5 stages. They don't develop to adult worms. So that is the sequence of events in case of Ankylostoma caninum and Ankylostoma selanicum. This is just a summarization. Ankylostoma brasilensis is responsible for CLM, Ankylostoma caninum and selanicum. CLM is caused for a transient period, but they develop in the intestine. Ankylostoma caninum up to L5 stages. But these L5 stages also have the ability to suck blood, and they are responsible for causing hemorrhagic enteritis. There is eosinophilia, and there is griping abdominal pain. Same is the situation with Ankylostoma selanicum. Then coming to Echinococcus granulosus, which causes Hydatidosis. Now, this is a tapeworm which resides in the small intestine of man, and it is the smallest tapeworm of, small intestine of dog, and it is the smallest tapeworm of dog, having only 3 segments. This is a gravid proglottid which gets detached from the strobila and appears in the, and then it is disintegrated in the intestine, and eggs appear in the feces of infected dogs. These eggs are consumed by herbivores like cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, horses, and omnivores like pigs. And when the eggs are consumed, eventually, hydatid cysts develop in the lung, liver, spleen, kidney, in different visceral organs. If you go through the literature, no organ has been exempted from hydatid attack, but the more common sites are lung and liver, and then spleen. So here the hydatid cysts develop, which may vary in size. It may be as small as a peanut to as big as a football, but the average size is around 5 to 10 centimeters. It has a thick wall we cannot see through. Inside the hydatid cyst, there is a hydatid fluid, and there are large number of protosclerosis. And these hydatid cysts survive at these locations for several months. And dogs acquire infection by consuming the hydatid cyst or infected viscera. Because if, the carcasses of the animals not disposed hygienically or scientifically, then the dogs have access to the carcass, and that is how they acquire infection. Or occasionally, dogs enter into the slaughterhouses, and if the due precautions are not taken care, then, the dogs can ingest these hydatid cysts, and then the adult tapeworm develops in the small intestine. Now, how man is involved here? The man is accidentally involved in the similar fashion as the herbivores and omnivores. When, these eggs of Echinococcus granulosus are consumed by human beings accidentally, then the hydatid cysts develop even in human beings, in the lungs, liver, and in different visceral organs. And then that is a dead end in the life cycle. The life cycle cannot progress further. Then let us talk about the pathogenic effects of hydatidosis in human beings. Let us not talk about dogs. The prevalence of hydatidosis in animals is declining. We have conducted a periodic survey, and the trend is a declining trend. And so is the case with human hydatidosis. These cases are usually reported as case reports or sporadically, particularly from smaller towns or from the villages. Animal cases are usually asymptomatic, or probably we are not in a position to recognize the symptoms, but human cases are symptomatic. And the symptoms depend upon the pathogenic effects depend upon number of parameters like number of cysts that are developing at a time, size of the cyst, location, if the vital organs are involved, and invariably the vital organs are involved, like lungs, liver, then the symptoms are expressed. Sometimes, hydatid cyst rupture in the body of human beings. It may not burst. Rupture means, there is a leakage through the hydatid cyst wall. There is a leakage of hydatid fluid. Then the protosclerosis may also come out. And in such, cases, there are two consequences. One is there is allergic reaction, anaphylactic shock, and there may be sudden death. And the second type of harmful effect is sometimes, the protosclerosis also come out and they attach to the parietal and visceral surfaces of peritoneum and also in the thoracic cavity if it is developing in the lungs and develop into secondary hydatidosis, or it is also known as disseminated hydatidosis. So that is the complication sometimes. Then there are some reports of the rupture of large size pulmonary hydatid cyst resulting into sudden death due to aspiration of the fluid, or it is also called as internal drowning. So that is the hydatidosis in human beings. I'm trying to shift to the next plate. It is not happening. Sorry, my slides are not moving. Yeah, sorry for the delay. Now, human hydatid cases can be diagnosed by serology, but that doesn't tell you the location. So imaging techniques are used that will tell you the location, number, size, and that helps if your surgical intervention has to be carried out. So the treatment, there are, chemotherapy, particularly if the cysts are embedded, and if the surgery is not possible, then you can use a heavy doses of albendazole and praziquantel maybe for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it takes almost a month or two for the hydatid cyst to degenerate. Surgical removal is generally attempted when there is a single cyst which is present on the surface, but a care has to be taken while removing the cyst. It should be removed intact. If there is a rupture of cyst, then there may be anaphylactic reaction or there may be secondary hydatidosis. Now, you must have realized that all these three types of infections, Toxocara infection, hookworm infection, and hydatidosis, where these are kind of saprozoonosis, where the infection is acquired by the human beings through contamination of food and water by consuming these infective stages. And the public places are also contaminated. Stray dogs are responsible, to some extent pet dogs are responsible. So I have just tried to summarize here, the cycle, zoonotic cycle, how it happens. Okay, so you can see here, these are the public places which are visited by people and then visited by people along with their pet animals. Stray dogs are also there. They defecate there, and you can see here, these are the infective stages, which are microscopic. You cannot see by naked eyes, which are responsible for contamination of these public places. You can see here recreational activities, by children, people, they are enjoying time on the beaches, playing in the sand or in the soil, lying down on the beaches. And that is how, they expose to these infective stages. And it is a common tendency, when after these recreational activities, people go and, have snacks. And generally at these places, there are, food stalls, even outside the garden, at the periphery of the beaches, or outside the school, outside the playgrounds. There are, even on the footpaths, there is a street food available. And if there is no facility to wash the hands, then, through contaminated hands, all these stages can be consumed and the zoonotic transmission takes place. And that is how people acquire infection of visceral larva migrans, cutaneous larva migrans, and hydatidosis. Now, general, aspects about the control of these zoonotic infections. There are 4 aspects. One is treatment, second is prevention, third is health education, and fourth is forming some study groups. Now, treatment of infected animal is very important because by doing that, we cut down the source of contamination, source of infection. So, number of drugs are available, and the veterinarians, they are doing their job. Then the pet owners should also remember regular deworming intermittently. The fecal sample should be examined, and then the infected dogs must be treated to avoid these circumstances. And then the second is, prevention, where, you have to prevent the transmission to dogs as well as to human beings. Particularly in case of Toxocara canis, whenever there is a pregnancy, whenever the dog is carrying, bitch is pregnant, you have to anticipate that every bitch is positive for Toxocara. You have to anticipate prenatal infection. You have to anticipate lactogenic infection. And you have to treat the pregnant bitch with with fenbendazole for a prolonged period, for say 14 days. You can start the treatment on the 35th day because transmission occurs in the advanced stage of pregnancy after 42nd day. So that this migration to the gravid uterus, migration to the mammary gland can be prevented, and prenatal and lactogenic infection can be prevented. Control of stray dogs are also important because you know now that they are responsible for causing environmental contamination. Then control of rodents. The environmental contamination, as I've said, is also caused by pet dogs because in cities, densely populated cities where people are living in apartments, the pet dogs are also taken out for their regular rounds, morning and evenings. And as you all know, that these are multi-purpose rounds, meant for the exercise of the dog, exercise for the owner, by providing opportunity for dogs to do the small job and a big job, then find a suitable mate for the dog. So these are all multi-purpose rounds, and that provide the opportunity for even pet dogs to defecate on the street and the public places, and that is how there is a contamination. So the pet dogs should not, if they pass the feces on the street, there are now rules in different cities that the pet owner should pick up the excreta and dispose it off. So these precautions should be taken to prevent the infection. Then the health education, where the veterinarians play a very important role, or the pet practitioners play very important role. So the pet owners should be educated about pet owners should be educated about the different ways by which the infection can be transmitted. Then in the clinics, the hospital, the clinical staff or the support staff, hospital staff must be educated about the different types of infections which they can acquire through their profession, through their activities. Medical practitioners, there should be, frequent meetings with the medicos in that particular region, and there should be, exchange of views, exchange of knowledge. So the knowledge, the gaps should be bridged. Then the health department, in the municipal corporation, people from health department must be educated about the different types of zoonosis. A general awareness should be created. Then setting up a study group. The study group should be set up at least at a regional level or a zonal level, where there should be involvement of veterinarians, medicos, environmentalists, then social science people, That is the concept of One Health, so that, there is an exchange of views and there is, overall, assessment of the situation. There must be some bird's eye view, where you can assess the situation covering all the angles. This group will also do the surveillance, will do the reporting of different zoonoses, different parasites, different infections, and the data is generated. And when data is generated, it is very, very handy for the people, So particularly for the veterinarians, for the medical, so can diagnose the conditions more effectively. So these are the 4 aspects of controlling zoonotic infections, not only parasitic zoonotic infections, but other zoonoses as well. I think we are short of time, so let me skip through this slide. Otherwise, I have, encountered a very interesting case, 2 cases. Now coming to my conclusion, the basic, what I feel here, zoonosis is a very, very important branch of biology, and it is being, neglected. Neglected is little harsh. It is being overlooked by both the fraternities, by the veterinarians as well as the medicos. In veterinary colleges, only the animal aspects are covered. In medicos, maybe only human aspects are covered. In medical colleges, at least in India, there is no even separate parasitology department. It is clubbed with microbiology. So there is a need, that there should be a center, which will have people from different specializations, veterinarians, medicos, environmentalists, social science, and they can even start postgraduate degree, postgraduate diploma, where veterinarians and medicos can take admission. They are eligible. Okay, so that is very important. As I have said here, that despite high prevalence of canine helminths, despite all conducive factors available in countries like India and tropical countries, human cases are not reported, or the data doesn't correspond with the animal data. Maybe the cases are not presented, maybe they are not diagnosed, maybe cases are not reported. So there is something wrong, and it has to be assessed and reassessed. Now, as far as zoonosis is concerned, not only about parasitic zoonosis, any zoonosis, whenever there are zoonosis, then because of the efforts from the medicos, veterinarians, or the administration, these organisms sometimes take a back seat. Sometimes these organisms are controlled. Sometimes they are eradicated, and sometimes they reappear. So there is an emergence and re-emergence of different types of zoonosis. So there is a need to assess the public health significance of different zoonosis of the particular region or a zone periodically. Dogs and cats, the zoonotic link is more intimate, I would say here, because these are the only species of animals which share not only premises with the human beings, but also the social activities with the human beings. And thus, there is a great, opportunity for different organisms to switch over from pet animals to human beings, and from human beings to pet animals. For controlling the anthropozoonotic infections or transmission of canine helminths, pet practitioners, they play a very important role. They have to take a driver's seat. They should have a good communication skill. They should communicate all these things with the pet owners, with the medicos, and that is how these infections can be controlled. The last thing what I want to say here, or what I would like to share here, is that generally what I have seen, that zoonotic risk is assessed on the basis of prevalence rate of the particular pathogen in the animals, which may not be true always. High prevalence does not mean there is a high zoonotic risk. There must be some model developed, mathematical model, say, for assessing the zoonotic risk, so that we will come to know exact situation of the zoonotic risk. That is what I want to say. So these are some of the references which I have gone through, and the information is compiled from here. I would like to acknowledge again the Google from where I have collected the pictures. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the initial delay. And though I am ending my topic here, some of the recommendations which I have spelled here, will come into reality. And let's hope that there will be a new beginning. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful presentation. I'm sure none of the participants wanted your lecture to end. Yes, we are running short on time. I will quickly go through a few questions. So the first question we have is, most of the countries in Asia have a lot of stray dogs roaming around. According to your experience, what is your suggestion to reduce the percentage of parasite zoonotic from dog to human?
As I have already said in the presentation, there should be a program, and I think in most of the countries have the program to control stray dog population. There are certain NGOs, for example, in Mumbai, I can list at least 6 or 7 NGOs which do deworming on a regular basis of these stray dogs. Okay, so by doing a deworming, the prevalence of different types of helminth is reduced and the zoonotic risk is also reduced.
Okay, thank you. The next question is Toxocara catai and canis can be transmitted via the transmammary route? How this infection may affect the kitten and puppies? Can it be diagnosed early?
Yes. Toxocara catai is transmitted lactogenic route. Toxocara canis is transmitted lactogenic as well as prenatal. Now the thing is, you have to sometime anticipate because the prevalence rate is so high, and that is how I said and I emphasize that there should be zonal centers which will generate the epidemiological data. Epidemiological data is very important, for assessing the situation. And these infections are very common. Say for in Mumbai, we have done survey in 2015, if I'm not wrong, and the prevalence rate of Toxocara canis was around 40 to 50%. The prevalence rate of Toxocara catai was around 25 to 30%. So the prevalence is, you have to sometimes anticipate, because sometimes if you collect the fecal sample during the early phase of infection, you may not see the eggs. Okay, so repeatedly, if you collect the fecal samples, you will come to know the eggs of Toxocara and Toxocara catai, and then on the basis of that, you can identify the infection and treat it. But basically, you have to anticipate and do the deworming in anticipation of the infection.
Okay, sir. Thank you. The next question is, should adult dogs be dewormed regularly, that is annually, or only if their fecal samples are tested positive? Since there are reports of development of resistance to endoparasiticides. What is your opinion?
Very good and pertinent question here. Now, the fecal sample examination is not a foolproof method of diagnosing helminthic infection. It has got its own limitations. We usually say that a positive means a positive, but if the fecal sample examination is negative, that doesn't necessarily mean that the dog or a cat is not harboring any parasite. There may be immature worms in the body. Then sometimes, the worms also do not lay eggs continuously. There is a diurnal variation. So sometimes, these eggs may not be detected. You collect hardly 2 to 3 grams of the fecal sample. So the eggs are also not uniformly distributed in the fecal sample. So, these are the limitations. So you have to deworm the dog regularly. Occasionally, yes, you can collect the fecal sample and get it tested in the laboratory. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is, could you elaborate about the low correspondence between human and canine cases? Could it be because of developed immunity in humans or failure of parasites? Your thoughts on it?
I think I have touched this particular point during my presentation. The main problem is that we don't have, at least in India, there are no diagnostic kits available. You can do ELISA, ready-made kits are available, or spot diagnosis can be done. So it is basically the communication gap, knowledge gaps, in the medical profession, where sometimes the doctors may not be aware about visceral larva migrans because there is no epidemiological data. So these knowledge gaps have to be bridged by creating a epidemiological data. These cases are not presented because visceral larva migrants, there is abdominal pain, there is coughing, intermittent fever, and then the cases may recover spontaneously. So the cases may not be presented. When they are presented, they may not be identified correctly. Even if they are identified, those cases are not published. Maybe, practitioners, the same thing I also, appeal to the pet practitioner that they should publish, because, they don't derive any benefits out of publication. So there are no publications. Colleges are doing work, but they have to cover 9 different species of animals. So there are limitations. So these are the problems, but the things are improving. Now the sophisticated techniques are available even in the smaller towns. And with that, the detection rate, I'm pretty sure, is also more.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we'll just take 2-3 more questions. One is an example for the zoonotic disease that can be transmitted from human to animals other than from animal to human.
The examples?
Yes, somebody has asked us that.
Okay, there are many. It's not only the animals, those are culprits. Human beings are also transmitting infection to to animals. I can quote example like amoebiasis is primarily infection of human beings. Dogs acquire it, cats acquire it. Then giardiasis, leishmanosis. So these are infections from human beings to animal. Malaria, infection from human beings to animal.
Okay, so what is the risk of cryptosporidiosis transmitted to humans through milk? How to detect cryptosporidiosis in milk?
Cryptosporidiosis detection is very difficult. To be very honest with you, let me confess that I don't know whether it is going through milk. Is it appearing in the milk or it is a contamination of the milk? That one has to assess. Cryptosporidiosis oocysts are very small, very difficult to detect during the routine clinical sample examination. Particularly, cryptosporidiosis is very important in immunocompromised individuals. In HIV patients, cryptosporidiosis is high. Cryptosporidiosis is also, yes, I forgot to mention, is the infection, which is very common in cows, and then human beings can acquire the infection.
Okay, I think we should wrap up now. I would take the last 2 minutes for thanking you, sir, for such an amazing and wonderful presentation. The thing you said that we must bridge the knowledge gap, and I'm sure this amazing lecture has inspired all of our participants. I would like to make one announcement for the participants. The certificate code is 9G6211. I'll repeat, 9G for golf, which is in small letters, 6211. You will receive the link for the certificates in your email IDs within a span of 4 days. So don't worry. You have to just remember this code and enter it for the form. So once again, sir, a big thanks to you and all the participants for joining with us. I now request the host. Yes,
thank you very much, and I am extremely sorry for the initial delay.
No, sir, it's okay. The presentation was all worth it, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm happy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining. We will see you again tomorrow in the morning session.